Family didn't invite me to Christmas dinner. It's no place for selfish like you, said my sister. I was cultured and silently stopped helping her and her husband. When they found out this is no place for selfish people like you. Jane's voice cut through the warmth of my parents' house like a cold blade. I had barely stepped through the door when she threw those words at me. For a second, I thought it was a joke. Maybe some botched attempt at humor. But one look at her face told me otherwise. She meant it. I looked past her to my parents sitting at the dinner table. The dining room was decorated as it had been every Christmas before, the same red tablecloth, the same centerpiece with gold candles that my father swore were just for decoration. It was familiar, comfortable. Or at least it was supposed to be. But tonight, something was different. My father looked away. My mother crossed her arms. No one rushed to correct Jane. No one told her to stop. They agreed with her. I tried to stay calm. What are you talking about? Jane scoffed. Don't play dumb. You only care about yourself. You're not helping Mom and Dad. You don't help anyone. I almost laughed at the irony. Jane, of all people, was accusing me of not helping. The same Jane who had spent the last few years drowning in bad choices, dragging everyone down with her, while I was the one keeping her and her husband, Eric, afloat. Her husband. That's what really got me. I hadn't helped Jane for her sake. She was reckless, impulsive, always looking for the next shortcut. But Eric, he had stayed with her longer than he should have. I knew he was exhausted. He had given her an ultimatum, get her act together or he was done. And as always, Jane had needed just a little more time. She had begged me to help. And I had. Because I felt sorry for her. Because I wanted to believe that she could change. But now, standing in my parents' house, being accused of selfishness by the person who owed me everything, I felt something shift. I turned to my parents. Is that so? My mother didn't hesitate. Jane helps us. You don't. Unbelievable. The money Jane used to help them? That was my money. Every time their refrigerator was full, every time a bill was paid, it was because I had sent money to Jane. But they didn't know that. And they obviously didn't want to know. Jane grinned like she had just won something. Yeah, you should go. I should have been angry. I should have thrown everything in their faces, told them exactly where their precious support had come from. But what was the point? They had already made up their minds, so I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I just turned and walked out. Christmas Eve. Snow was falling in soft flakes as I got into my car. The world outside looked peaceful, a stark contrast to the mess I had just left behind. I drove home in silence, not even bothering to turn on the radio. I spent Christmas alone that night. Just me and my cat, Luna, sitting in the dim light of the Christmas tree. No messages. No phone calls. Nothing. For years, I had given and given. And now that I had nothing left to give, they had no use for me. But if they thought I'd continue to pay for Jane's life after this, they were in for a surprise. The next morning I woke up in a quiet apartment. Only Luna stretched out next to me, her paws kneading my blanket. No Merry Christmas texts. No missed phone calls. Nothing. I wasn't surprised, but it still felt strange. I had spent every Christmas since I could remember with my family. Even when I was busy, even when work piled up, I always made time. And now, it was as if I never existed. I made coffee, sat by the window and watched the world outside go on without me. Kids playing in the snow, neighbors walking their dogs, someone across the street carrying a huge Christmas bag, probably full of presents. A normal Christmas for everyone else. For the first time in years, I had no responsibilities. No fake smiles, no pretending I didn't see the favoritism, no being the family ATM. It was strangely peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. For a second, I thought maybe it was Mom. Maybe she'd realized how unfair this was. Maybe she'd called to set things right. But no. It was Eric. I heard what happened. I'm sorry. You don't deserve this. I stared at the message. He wasn't the type to get involved in Jane's mess. He usually kept quiet, tried to keep the peace. The fact that he reached out meant more than he probably realized. I texted back, not your fault. Merry Christmas still. He replied almost immediately, Merry Christmas, and thanks for everything. I mean it. I didn't know what to say, so I just left it at that. The next week went by without a word from Jane or my parents. Then, on January 2nd, my phone rang. It was Jane. I let it ring. A minute later, a text appeared. Where's the money? I grinned. She was predictable. She didn't care about the fight, about Christmas, about family. All she cared about was her next handout. I didn't answer. A few minutes later my doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised to see Jane standing there, looking annoyed. She had this look like she expected me to laugh it off, give her the money, and move on like nothing happened. I opened the door but didn't step aside. What do you want? You know what I want, she said. It's the second. You should send the money. I leaned against the doorframe. Yeah, About that. I'm done. Her face twitched. What do you mean you're done? I mean I'm not paying for your life anymore. Figure it out. She let out a short, humorless laugh. You're serious? As serious as I was when you told me to leave on Christmas. Her jaw clenched. You know what happens if I don't have the money, don't you? You know Eric, I cut her off. Eric's not my problem. Neither are you.
For a second, I thought she was actually going to hit me.
Her hands clenched into fists, her face flushed. Then, instead, she scoffed and turned away. You'll regret this, she muttered. I doubt it. I closed the door. She knocked a few times, harder each time, but I just grabbed my phone and held it up. I'm calling the cops. That was enough to make her leave. But that was only the beginning. I thought that was the end of it. That Jane would get the hint, figure out her own life for once, and leave me alone. But I should have known better. 3 days later I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I looked through the peephole. My parents. Great. I considered not answering, just letting them stand there until they got tired and left. But I knew they'd just come back, so I sighed and opened the door. My mother was stiff, arms crossed. My father looked worried, but in that performative way, like he was more worried about keeping up appearances than actually understanding what was happening. Can we come in? My mother asked. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside. They walked in like they owned the place, my father sitting on the couch, my mother standing by the door like she was about to start a lecture. I didn't sit down. I leaned against the counter and waited. Jane told us what you did, my mother said. I raised an eyebrow. You mean what I didn't do? My father sighed. Oliver, she's your sister. She needs help. She always needs help, I said. And for years, I was the one who helped her. Do you know why she was able to help you? Because she used my money. They both looked uncomfortable, like they'd just been told something too complicated to process. My mother cleared her throat. That's not the point. Then what is? I asked. My father leaned forward, clasping his hands. She's younger than you, Oliver. She's always needed more support, and we love her more, my mother added. Just like that. Flat. Casually. Like it was a simple fact, not something that should have hurt. I let out a small laugh. At least you finally admit it. My father waved his hand as if to brush it aside. That's not what we came here to talk about. You need to start sending her money again. I shook my head. Not happening. My mother's jaw tightened. Think of the family, Oliver. You don't just walk out on your own blood. That was rich, coming from them. I looked at them both, really looked, and something clicked. They weren't here because they cared about Jane. They were here because they had gotten used to the money she gave them, my money. And now that it was gone, they were panicking. They were just like her. I felt a strange sense of peace as I got up and headed for the door. You should go. My father's face fell. Oliver. No, seriously. Go. I held the door open. My mother exhaled sharply, grabbed my father's coat, and muttered, let's go. My father hesitated. You're making a mistake, Oliver. No, I said. I'm finally making one. They left. I closed the door, locked it, and sat down, staring at my phone. Part of me expected Jane to text again, maybe some threats, some manipulation, something. But she didn't. And for a while, I thought maybe that was it. But then something completely unexpected happened. Eric called me. Not a text. Not a hesitant hey, hope you're okay message. A full-blown phone call. I stared at the screen before I answered. Hello? He hesitated. Then, in a voice that sounded both tired and oddly calm, he said, I left her. I blinked. What? Eric sighed on the other end of the line. I left her, Oliver. I packed my bags and I left. I wasn't sure what to say. I had expected things to end badly for Jane, but not so soon. When? Last night. He paused. She doesn't know where I am. She's been calling non-stop, but I'm done. I sat down, still trying to process. What happened? Eric let out a dry laugh. What didn't happen? She went crazy when she realized the money wasn't coming. She panicked, paced around, cursed at everything, at me, at you, at the world. Said it was all your fault, like she had no responsibility in any of it. Sounds about right. Yeah, but then, she said something that made me see things differently. She actually admitted that she didn't know how to live without you covering for her. She said you ruined everything by quitting. I exhaled. Wow. He fell silent for a second. Oliver, do you know how screwed up that is? I gave her years of my life. I forgave her for every stupid mistake, every lie, every broken promise. And in the end, all she cared about was that you wouldn't bail her out anymore. I could hear the emotion in his voice, but he kept it calm. I realized something, he went on. I stayed because I thought I was waiting for her to change. But really, I was just waiting for a sign that it was okay to leave. I hesitated. And me cutting her off was that sign? Yes. I sat back and stared at the ceiling. So what now? He let out a slow breath. Now, I start over. I don't know where I'm going yet, but anywhere is better than where I was. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Good. He hesitated again. Oliver? Yes? Thanks. I frowned. For what? For everything. For helping, for being the only person who saw what was happening. He paused. For not being like her. That hit harder than I expected. We talked a little more, mostly about logistics, where he was staying, if he needed anything, if Jane had any way of tracking him down. He assured me that he was fine, that he had everything under control. Then, just before we hung up, he said one last thing that took me by surprise. You know, Oliver, if things had been different, I think I would have chosen you. I didn't even have time to answer before the line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at my phone. And then, as if the universe had perfect timing, another message popped up. From Jane. You did this. I hope you're happy. I stared at Jane's message for a while, debating whether to reply. You did this. I hope you're happy. There were so many things I could say. I could tell her that I wasn't the one who made Eric leave, she did that all on her own. I could tell her that for once in her life she needed to take responsibility instead of blaming everyone else. But honestly, I didn't care enough to respond. I put my phone down and went to make coffee, trying to shake the strange feeling Eric's last words had left me with. If things were different, I think I would have chosen you. I wasn't even sure what to make of that. Was it just something he said in the moment? Did he mean it? And why did it keep playing in my head? I took a sip of coffee, exhaled, and forced myself to move on. Jane was spiraling. My parents were probably furious. Eric was gone. That was the situation, and nothing was going to change it. Or so I thought. A week went by with nothing but silence. No texts. No visits. No guilt trips. It was almost peaceful. Then, out of nowhere, my mother called. I ignored her. A minute later, my father called. Then Jane. I ignored them all. Then a message from my mother appeared. Oliver, please pick up. It's about Jane. I frowned. I wasn't about to fall for another manipulation attempt, but something about the way she phrased it felt wrong. I sighed and finally answered when she called again. What? Her voice was shaky. It's Jane. She's not doing well. I almost rolled my eyes. Not my problem. No, Oliver, listen. She took a deep breath. Eric left, the money stopped coming, and then her job fired her. She's not eating. She's not leaving her apartment. She hasn't showered in days. Your father and I have tried to talk to her, but she just sits there staring at the wall. She's completely shut down. I was silent for a moment. I had expected her to struggle, to fail, to face the consequences of her actions. But this was worse than I could have imagined. What do you want me to do about it? My mother sniffled. You're her sister. I clenched my jaw. So? You have to help. I almost laughed. I have to. Yes, she insisted. She's always needed you, Oliver. She's always looked up to you. I shook my head. No. She's always used me. And the second I stopped letting her, she turned on me. She started to cry. So you're really going to let your sister fall apart? Just like that? I took a slow breath. Mom, if Jane really wants to change, she has to do it. Not me, she sobbed harder. But she's alone. So was I at Christmas. Silence. Then she whispered in the softest voice. We were wrong. I hadn't expected that. I let out a breath. Yes. You were. She sniffled again. Will you at least go see her? Please. I hesitated. Every instinct in me told me to go. She wasn't my responsibility. She never was. But against my better judgment, I found myself saying, fine. Once. But that's it. I hung up before she could say anything else, grabbed my coat, and left. I wasn't prepared for what I was about to walk into. I pulled up to Jane's apartment and just sat there. I wasn't sure why I had agreed to this in the first place. Maybe to prove a point. Maybe to see if she'd really hit rock bottom. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Jane, open up. Silence. I tried the door. Unlocked. The smell hit me first, stale air, sweat, and something rotten. Clothes were everywhere. Takeout containers stacked on the coffee table. A half-empty whiskey bottle on the floor. The curtains were drawn, the only light coming from the TV playing some random reality show. Jane was on the couch, staring at nothing. She looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under her eyes, wearing the same clothes as before. Next to her was a plate of untouched food. I stepped in. Jesus, Jane. Nothing. Not even a blink. I sighed. You're just going to sit here and rot? No answer. I shook my head. Mom thinks I can help you. But I'm not here to hold your hand. If you want to fix this, get up. If not, I'll leave and you'll be on your own. She didn't move for a long time. Then, just as I reached the door, her voice broke. I don't know how. I turned around. She actually looked scared. Lost. I should have walked out. I wanted to. Instead, I exhaled. Fine. One chance. You pay me back every cent. You blow it? I'm gone. She swallowed hard and nodded. I didn't really believe her, but I stayed anyway. Helping Jane was exhausting. At first, I thought she'd snap out of it quickly, but it wasn't that easy. She was a mess, barely eating, barely talking, completely useless at figuring out her next steps. It took 3 days just to get her to take a shower and another 2 to get her to leave her apartment. She wasn't just broke, she was in debt. Her credit cards were maxed out, her bills were overdue, and with no job, no savings, and no backup plan, she had nothing. She was falling apart. I helped her put together a resume because, of course, she never bothered to update it and made her apply for jobs. She hated every second of it. She wasn't used to working for things. She was used to me solving her problems. One night, as I was helping her sort out her finances, I got a call. It was Eric. I hesitated before answering. Hey. He said. How's she doing? I glanced at Jane, who was slumped on the couch, scrolling through job listings like it was torture. Pathetic but alive. He let out a dry laugh. Sounds about right. There was a pause. Then he asked, why are you helping her? It was a good question. One I've been asking myself since the moment I'd walked into her apartment. I sighed. I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to see if she could really change. Another pause. Then he said quietly, I don't think she will. I didn't answer right away. Just be careful, he added. Jane only cares about herself. Don't let her drag you down again. He hung up before I could say anything else. I looked at Jane, still oblivious to the fact that her ex-husband had just warned me about her. For the first time since I'd started helping her, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Helping Jane was one thing. Trusting her again was another. Every day I saw the same patterns, the laziness, the excuses, the entitlement creeping back in. She applied half-heartedly for jobs, complained when I pushed her, and pretended it was all temporary until someone bailed her out again. It was frustrating. But the weird part? Most of the time, I wasn't even thinking about Jane. I was thinking about Eric. After he called, we started texting more. Nothing deep at first, just random check-ins, little conversations. But it wasn't long before our messages stretched into late nights, before I found myself looking forward to hearing from him. Then, one night, he called me again. Tell me something funny, he said when I picked up. I grinned. Funny how? Something silly. Something to make me forget that my whole life has fallen apart. I thought for a second. Jane applied for a job today, he laughed. That's funny. We talked for an hour after that. About nothing. About everything. And then he asked, do you ever think about how things could have been different? I sat back and stared at the ceiling. You mean if you had chosen me instead of Jane? There was a pause. Yeah. I exhaled. More than I should. Silence. Then quietly he said, me too. That was the moment I knew things were changing. And Jane? She had no idea. Not yet. But she would soon. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Just talking. Just catching up. But the more Eric and I talked, the more obvious it became, this wasn't just two people venting about the same toxic person in their lives. This was something else. He started calling every night. Sometimes we talked for hours, sometimes just a few minutes. It wasn't forced. It wasn't awkward. It just worked. And then one night he asked, can I see you? I hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. I met him in a little cafe and the second I saw him, I knew. This wasn't just old wounds reopening. This was something real. We talked as if we had been waiting for this moment for years. And maybe we had. After that, things happened quickly. He started coming over more, then staying over, then moving in. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy. It was just right. And Jane? When she found out, she went crazy. She showed up at my door one night angry. You stole him from me. I crossed my arms. You lost him all by yourself. She clenched her fists. You're supposed to be my sister. I shrugged. You're supposed to be a decent wife. She stormed off after that, muttering something about how I had ruined her life. But the truth? She had done it all by herself. Then came the real surprise, our parents stopped defending her. After I cut her off financially, she went to them for help. But the moment she couldn't give them anything in return, they turned their backs on her. I heard from my mother once after that. She called, said she was happy for me and Eric, and then admitted something I never expected. We should have been better to you. It wasn't an apology, not really. But it was close enough. And Jane? She faded into the background. No more calls. No more visits. Just silence. Eric and I had built something real together. And now, we're adopting a baby. We're starting our own family. Jane always thought I needed her. But in the end, she was the one who lost everything.